Hey, folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board. While I was visiting my family over the holidays, we spent a couple of nights watching some old episodes of a TV show called Chuck. Now, you might remember Chuck. It was from the mid aughts. I think it premiered in, I want to say 2005, maybe 2004. Gosh, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe later than that. I could be fake news. But the basic premise was it was about a geek who worked for essentially Best Buy. They called it the Buy More, and he wound up with an entire database of secret CIA files dumped in his head as kind of subliminal messages. Circumstances are too complicated to get into and not really important to what I want to talk about. Um, the thing that struck me as I was watching this is the character of John Casey. Now, if you're not familiar with Chuck, again, because this total civilian had a bunch of national security secrets dumped into his head, he was given a couple of minders, one from the NSA and one from the CIA. And the CIA minder was his love interest. Her name was Sarah. And the NSA minder was a man named John Casey, who was played by Adam Baldwin, who is just perfect for the role. Um, but the interesting thing about John Casey is that he's clearly a right wing guy. He's pro Second Amendment. He's pro guns. He seems to be at least a little bit religious. He mentions being a choir boy, and he's pro military. You know, a lot of the stereotypical things that were associated with the right wing, especially at that time, were descriptive of John Casey. And the interesting thing about John is that he's a perfectly normal and accepted part of the show's cast. He's not like someone like Frank Burns from MASH, who was a villain every episode he was in. He's not an ineffectual loon or a nutbag. He's a good-hearted guy with a lot of behaviors that his friends, Chuck Bartowski and Sarah and Morgan, the other characters at the Buy More, and Chuck's sister, they find him a little odd. He can be off-putting, but that's fair because Chuck is largely a comedy, and everybody in the show is quite odd, and everybody finds everybody else a little off-putting at times. Um, Chuck is weird and he's a bit cowardly. He's easily distracted, but that's all played for laughs. And Casey is macho and he's gung ho and he's gun crazy, but it's all played for laughs. And they're not mean spirited laughs either. Casey is a very important part of the show, part of the dynamic. He likes Chuck. He's protective of Chuck. He looks out for Chuck's best interests. He doesn't have some money grabbing scheme. He's not making a white supremacist bid for power. None of that stuff. Casey is just a good guy who happens to have different priorities than Chuck and other characters on the show. And he is even the right person. Sometimes when there are questions about whether the less violent or more pacifistic or more even naive ways to approach problems is the right one. It's almost always Chuck advocating for those and Casey advocating against. Sometimes Casey is right and sometimes Casey is wrong. And there's a very good give and take in the show in that respect. And when Casey is right, when the more hard-nosed, meaner or more violent approach to a problem is the correct one, he's not gleeful about it. He's never happy about it. He he is resigned to the fact that sometimes he has to seem like mean-spirited or heavy-handed. He has to seem like a hard guy because his priority, first and foremost, is protecting people. And the people around him value that. I was struck as I was watching some of these episodes with my family with Morgan's response when he met Casey's daughter. When he found out that this woman thought she was Casey's daughter at the very least. The thing he said is, if you're really John Casey's daughter, you're probably the safest person on the planet. And he said that because he knew what Casey was capable of, and he knew that Casey used those skills to protect the people he cared about. It's a very different kind of entertainment than we get now. And I wanted to talk about Chuck because I think if we really want to get back to an entertainment that is for a wide audience, an entertainment that is trying to appeal to the broadest possible customer base, Chuck is a really good rule of thumb. There are a wide variety of characters there with different outlooks on life, with different viewpoints on many of the important issues of the day. And they are all, by and large, those viewpoints are all represented in the main cast. And, honestly, when there are villains, they tend not to have very deep philosophical ties. They tend to be more. They are a little cartoonish. Let's put it that way. But on the whole, even the villains have pretty good, well balanced motivations. From what I've seen, I haven't really seen the fourth or fifth season. I've only seen a little bit of the third. So I'm largely speaking from memory here. But I think that with the respect the main cast is treated with, their differences, their different priorities, their different approaches to problems. If you really want to write stories or draw comics or otherwise create stories that will appeal to a wide audience, you could do worse than going back and watching Chuck. Pay special attention, as I said before, to the character of John Casey and how he is treated with respect to the other characters. Also pay a lot of attention to the dynamic between Chuck and all of the government operatives. They have very different experiences and viewpoints. There was one episode we were watching where Chuck objected to Sarah keeping guns in his couch because he didn't feel entirely safe with that. He's a civilian. He hasn't used guns a whole lot. At that point in the series, I don't know if this ever changes, but at that point, Chuck's only weapon was a tranq gun. He didn't carry, your standard bullet gun. He wasn't comfortable with the idea of shooting and potentially killing people. And that request, he requested that Sarah take the weapons out of his apartment, and she did, and that came around to bite them. The writers were they weren't interested in showing an objection to guns being anywhere always being the correct course of action. Chuck's call was the wrong one, and that's worthy of respect for the writers team. They decided we want our character to grow, and maybe they were the writers were uncomfortable with the idea of guns being left around an apartment, but they recognize that there are uses for them, and they showed the potential downfalls, especially in a dangerous line of work. We're not all CIA agents, but I thought it was a very fair and even-handed approach, and there was no preaching. There was just a situation where it would have been much better if Sarah and Chuck had a weapon at hand, and they didn't. And it was, I thought, a very good, very balanced look at how it wasn't even about we have a right to have guns or any of those things. It was just about how if you have fears and you even know they're a little irrational and you let them control you, well, you can wind up hurting yourself and the people around you. So yeah, morals like that, character clashes like that, respectful, well thought out, balanced. These are the things that are lacking from a lot of modern entertainment. And you really don't have to go back that far to find instances of them. So yeah, if you really want to see a good example of that, again, I highly recommend you watch Chuck. See if you can find the DVDs in your local library, or I hear you can stream it on Amazon. And that's all I got for tonight. So there's a like button and a subscribe button down below. Use them as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.